Good afternoon and welcome to day one of National Apprenticeship Week GM. In this afternoon session, we're going to look at demystifying apprenticeships and how they help young people to get ahead. This session is primarily for parents, carers, teachers, careers leaders, and anyone working in a school and college environment. Really exciting session ahead. Some fantastic guests on the call today. From two apprentices and an apprenticeship expert who's here to talk about apprenticeships from a provider and employer perspective, and the two apprentices, qualified apprentices, now employees rather, Lucy and Isabelle from Barclaycard and Brother UK. Without further ado, I'm going to first of all just introduce you to Matt Lee. And Matt is the program manager at Greater Manchester Learning Provider Network. Matt.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, my name's Matt Lee. I work for the Greater Manchester Learning Provider Network. I deliver sessions very similar to this for schools and colleges across Greater Manchester on behalf of the National Apprenticeship Service, but also having the fact that I work for a network of a training provider kind of gives me a picture of what's happening in Greater Manchester as well. As Kevin said, we're delighted to be joined by two now former apprentices, Lucy and Isabelle, today, who are going to kind of share their experience of what it's like to be recruited as an apprentice and to go through that process. But I'll just give a very quick introduction from me, first of all, just to kind of get everyone on a level playing field about what an apprenticeship is. Apprenticeship is a job, so it's a job where you are working, but it's also an opportunity to continue your learning as an apprentice as well. And the apprentice will work 80% of the time and study 20% of the time, and they're studying, their learning is directly related to the job that they're doing. So as I said, they're going to be, the employers you're going to work 80% of the time for the employer, and they're going to be studying 20% of that time as well. And the other thing I wanted to just mention now, and I can certainly pick up if anybody has any specific questions later on, is the picture of apprenticeship vacancies in Greater Manchester at the moment. Given that we're in the midst of a global pandemic, it's not a great situation. Vacancies are around about 50% of where I'd normally expect them to be. They're around about 6,600 nationally. I would normally expect to see 12,500, 13,000, something like that. It is bad news. However, it is on an upward curve. And if we go back to GCSE and A-level results day last August, vacancies were around about 20% of where we would have expected them to be. So certainly some employers are starting to reconsider their position for recruitment this year, and are starting to open up recruitment processes for current school and college leavers. But there's employers will not be able to recruit this year as they begin their own kind of recovery process, perhaps having furloughed staff and made staff redundant. So I anticipate that the vacancy numbers will be much reduced on normal years, perhaps somewhere between sort of 60 and 70%, although it's clearly quite difficult to predict an exact number at the moment. What I'd like to do first then is really just introduce the session and break it down into three parts. We're going to talk about the recruitment processes first of all. Then we're going to talk about the kind of what happens during the apprenticeship, and then, as you would expect, at the end, what happens at the end of the apprenticeship. So I think at this point I would like to bring Lucy in first of all, and if Lucy could kind of share her experiences of the of her recruitment process into Barclays.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Brilliant. Okay, so my name's Lucy Banks. I work at Barclays in the technology sector, where I work as an incident manager. So that basically means that I help to fix major technical incidents and make sure they don't happen again. So the bulk of my role is to oversee governance fundamentals for incident management globally for the bank, and I'm a manager of a small team who completes this. So I've been at Barclays for 5 years now, and I started on the technology apprenticeship straight after college. which was a 2-year apprenticeship. For my education element, I was given a choice of level 3 or level 4 college courses to study, or I was given the opportunity to complete a degree apprenticeship. So I chose the degree apprenticeship, which took 4 years to complete and included a day's release to attend my lectures at Manchester Met University. I studied software engineering and I graduated in 2019 with a first class degree. So looking at the application process, so I filled out an application form online, which included a cover letter. I was invited to attend an assessment day with the other candidates, which included a day of different activities to test skills like teamwork and decision making. And then following this, the hiring managers made their choice of who they wanted to select as for the candidates. So yeah, from day one, I was considered just like any other member of the team. I spent time working alongside my new colleagues to learn from their experiences, and I soon started to pick up skills and tasks and my own responsibilities as well. It's also worth noting that my skills and experience were always put into perspective, meaning I was never pushed to do something that I may not necessarily have been ready or confident in doing. So the support was incredible, and on-the-job training was constant. Yeah, that's about it really. Anything else that you'd like to?
Just what was the reaction of friends and family? Because let's face it, it's still the kind of less common route than the academic route into a degree, isn't it? And into a career. Yeah,
well, my school and college didn't really advertise for apprenticeships as much as other career pathways. So I wasn't fully informed about the options that were available to me. I heard about the apprenticeship from a family friend who worked at the bank. So I did apply directly through Barclays, the apprenticeship. Family and friends wise, there was no real expectation for my career. As long as I started earning money, my parents didn't really care whether that was part-time whilst I completed a uni course or through full-time work. So they were open to me choosing an apprenticeship, but it wasn't really considered as the first choice. I think most of my friends chose full-time uni, and I was only one of a few probably who did the apprenticeship.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Now, if I can bring in Isabelle at this point, I think if I remember rightly, Isabelle, your kind of recruitment process was a little bit different and kind of started a few months earlier, didn't it?
Yeah, so I went to work experience, so it was quite different. So I completed my work experience at my current company back in year 10, and I really enjoyed my time there, and I knew that apprenticeships and getting straight into on-the-job learning was for me. So I went there for a week in year 10, and then I was asked to come back for more work experience a month later when they were a team member down. And this just really helped me to understand about the business administration and the team. And then towards the end of year 11, I was asked to come back for a formal chat to discuss whether I wanted to complete an apprenticeship with them. So the process for me getting the job was by going in for a formal chat, and we discussed what I wanted to do for a future career pathway, which I then explained that I love my work experience, and I've just said that there would be an amazing company to work for. So I took the opportunity, which was given, to do a level 3 business administration apprenticeship. And then when I got there, so when I was started out doing my apprenticeship, I was treated like any other staff member. They included me in everything and made me feel so welcome. And if I was ever struggling at work, they was always willing to help me learn no matter what. I would have regular one-to-ones with my line manager. And yeah, so another choice which was discussed a lot about in schools and with my parents was going to college. However, I did feel that I didn't want to choose this pathway because I didn't really like the idea of sitting in a classroom environment. I just wanted to gain experience by going into on-the-job learning, and my parents, who did accept my choice, and they supported me all the way. So at the start of my apprenticeship, I was only 16 and I've never worked in a work environment before. So this did come with lots of nerves. However, I did get to know my colleagues who helped me tremendously throughout my apprenticeship, which gave me great confidence to want to push myself and pass all my GCSEs. And I could see how much I had developed from the beginning of my apprenticeship and to the end, because I feel like I've learned so many new skills and qualities, and I was given lots more responsibilities throughout my apprenticeship because my line manager trusted me to get the job done. So I have currently just completed my level 3 business administration apprenticeship with the Apprentice Academy back in December.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Isabelle. Yeah, I'll later on, if it's okay, I might talk a little bit more about your endpoint assessment, as it's fairly fresh in your memory, because I think that'll be an interesting insight. I mean, what you've heard from 2 apprentices this afternoon, and I can give you kind of a bit of a view of what the training providers and employers do in partnership, really, to run through a recruitment process, I should say. And you may find that employers, I think Barclays is a good example, where employers will take the lead, they'll take sole ownership, and it will be done entirely by the employer. And then the apprentice will be kind of introduced to the training provider, or in Lucy's case, the university, once that person has been offered the post. What we tend to find, and particularly with perhaps SMEs and smaller businesses, is that the recruitment process can often be a partnership, and there's no one size fits all with any type of process like this. But I can give you a kind of general view of what you're likely to expect, and it's going to be a minimum a 2-stage process. There is most likely to be some kind of written application stage. Now, that written application stage could be a CV with a covering letter, or it could be an application form. Either way, that first stage of that process, in some cases, may be supported and managed by the training provider. So they may provide a kind of first sift of the applicants. Once that initial application form has been completed and there's a short list, 2 different things could happen. There could be straight to an interview stage. That interview could be a 2-stage process in itself. You may find that the training provider then interviews the candidates before the next level of shortlisting, and then the successful candidates go on to an employer interview, and the employer makes the final decision. In some cases, the training provider will hand over to the employer once they've shortlisted after the written application stage. Again, no one size fits all. And I think Lucy made a really important point as well about assessment days. These are a growing area in apprenticeships, particularly as more and more larger businesses tend to bring with them their existing recruitment processes into apprenticeship recruitment. So these may be organisations that up till a few years ago didn't recruit apprentices, but had a robust recruitment process for all other jobs, and decided to bring this in to operate across their apprenticeship recruitment. So assessment days, and I'll get Lucy to describe hers in more detail in a moment if she can, but they're there to bring all the applicants together who've been successfully shortlisted after the written application stage. Those applicants will participate in activities where they'll have to work together to complete a particular activity. That assessment day may also consist of some tests. It's highly likely to consist of an interview as well. And as Lucy alluded to, the people who are visibly observing and assessing those candidates at that assessment day will be making a decision together as to who they're going to recruit. So Lucy, if I may bring you in, I wonder if you could provide a brief summary of what your assessment day looked like, because it's kind of quite hard to describe it if you've not been on one.
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head, really. It depends on the amount of intake each session. So there was quite a lot, if I remember. It was so long ago. There was probably about 70 odd candidates there over a 2-day period. You were invited to one of the 2 days. And yeah, like you said, it's all different types of activities and sessions that you do. So you do team working sessions. So you have like I think we did, you know, the Spag Mallow challenge. So you had to build a structure, budget it all, and make sure that it didn't fall over. You know, just like to basically test skills on communication and teamwork, basically fundamental skills for a job role. We also did where we had to stand up and talk in front of a group. We did interviews, like you say. We did some basic tests in maths and English as well. And all whilst this was happening, we had the hiring managers basically overviewing the whole day and kind of making a note on which candidates they liked. And then obviously after the day, they would all sit down in a room and decide who gets placed where. But it's also worth noting as well that I was given a choice of what type of job I wanted to have, obviously because it's a technology centre. They made sure they asked every candidate whether they wanted a technical role, a business role, or a hybrid role. So a bit of both, which obviously is key really, because say if you're not technically oriented and you get placed into a technical role, the candidate might not work well, or you know, they might not get their full potential out of the job. So it was really good that they did that. I chose a hybrid role because I quite fancied a bit of the both, and that is where I was placed. So it was good, really good.
Excellent, thank you for that insight. Yeah, it's interesting. Just out of interest, I can't remember, I think you've told me before, but how do you remember how many candidates there were at the assessment day as to answer?
I think he's how many got put on, did you say? Sorry.
Yeah, well, how many attendees at the assessment day, and then how many went through to actual roles at the bank?
Yeah, I think there was just short. I think there was just short of 100 candidates over the 2 days, and there was about 35 positions. So it was quite competitive, yeah. But yeah, they did. I think obviously it depends each year, but they did. I think they did 2 different intakes that year. I think it's usually on a yearly basis. We are taking on this year as well, looking at May or July to bring people on. But yeah, it depends every single time about the requirement for the bank.
Okay, thank you very much. Just going to go on to a few kind of perhaps hints and tips that might help a young person navigate the recruitment process really. And I can talk about this from an employer perspective as someone who interviews potential apprentices into our business. And I suppose the key points are be prepared to apply, give yourself enough time as you possibly can. Do your research about the business, look at their website, look at their social media. Get someone else to check your CV, covering letter or application form. Get a second pair of eyes on that. It's certainly worth having someone else look at it and perhaps adding to what you've already written. At the moment, as I said about the vacancy rate being sort of 50% down of where I would normally expect it to be, apply for as many as you possibly can, not just to cast your net as far as wide as you can, but also I think with every application, the experience you gain of going through that process, whether it's just a form or whether you get to the interview stage, you gain experience, you get better for every interview and application form you send. And again, crucially at the moment, be resilient. Don't try not to get too concerned if you're not getting responses or you've been rejected. It is a difficult year this year, more than any other year. So please keep applying. One thing I just want to move on to slightly, and both I think both Lucy and Isabelle have alluded to this, is kind of what happens at the very start of the apprenticeship. Now, there will be some kind of induction process with both the employer and the apprenticeship training provider. I think in some cases you may find that there is some kind of boot camp, which is often somewhere where the apprentices will go to prior to actually starting work or within the first few weeks of starting work to get their skills up to a certain level. So Isabelle, very sort of quickly bring you in at this point. What was your kind of induction process and how supportive was it right at the very start of your apprenticeship in those first few weeks?
Yeah, so to begin with, we had induction. So this was a 2-day induction where I would go down to the Apprentice Academy in Manchester. And on these 2 days, we would get to know each other. All the apprentices went there, and we all got to know one another, and we all like started to learn new skills and qualities, and we just talked to everyone, and we had some activities and things where we would discuss like how can we get involved with each other at work, how can you form relationships with your colleagues and things like that. And then we would have boot camp. So I would go every other month, and this was at the same place, the Apprentice Academy, and we would have to complete lots of activities, and we would get to know more about our apprenticeship and the skills and the areas that we wouldn't necessarily be able to learn within the office. So we would go to boot camp to like learn more skills and qualities, and yeah, so we would complete activities, tasks, and just get to know everyone there.
Brilliant, thanks for that. Come from a technical background from college or in an academic way. Did you go for any kind of boot camp or anything to bring you up to a certain level of technical skills before you sort of move through your job?
Well, in terms of the job role, no, actually, it was fully on the job training. And when I started, because I joined in July, I actually had some time to decide what course I picked. So the degree didn't actually start until September. And then when I joined onto the degree, we actually had one whole week at uni where we had a boot camp to kind of get us up to speed with. It was actually a coding boot camp, so we started coding, and it was the first time I'd ever written a line of code, so it was quite an intense week. But yeah, that was more from my studies perspective, not necessarily the bank, not necessarily work. It was mostly on the job training, the work. So,
okay.
So quite different.
Thank you. Yeah, so almost preparation for the degree program rather than the specific job role. All right, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, it's helpful. So I've talked about a split, an 80% working and 20% split. Now, the way that the learning is delivered and the timing of when that 20% takes place is usually agreed between the employer and the training provider in advance of the vacancy being even posted and made available for people to apply for. It can be flexed throughout. It can change throughout. So what I was going to ask Isabelle first of all was how was your 20% off the job? How was that set aside, and how did Brother ensure that you had that time given to you to do your apprenticeship work? You've mentioned the sort of once a month visits to the Apprentice Academy, but clearly once a month clearly isn't your full 20%, is it?
Yeah, so if I ever had any quiet time within work, I'd put time aside to make sure that I'm getting all my assessments completed, making sure that I'm doing all my tasks, I'm uploading everything that I'm working on to my portfolio. But it was agreed at the start of my apprenticeship that I would have 1 day a week of off-the-job training time. So I'd put that time in every Friday. So all Friday, I would do all my apprenticeship work and all my studies and all my researching. So this was agreed, and my line manager was very understanding, and she knew that I needed to do this on like have a day off, and I needed to have some at that time to do all my studies.
Excellent. So as well as those visits to the Apprentice Academy, and then you have these other Fridays where you had time set aside, what sort of contact did you have with the training provider? Did you get any contact with the training provider on those Fridays, or how was how was your teaching delivered during that time?
Yes, so I had a careers coach, so she worked at the Apprentice Academy, and she would visit me also another day a month, so every month, to set me tasks to complete for the following month when she would visit again. So I'd have assignments to complete every month ready for when she would next visit me. I would also have to complete tasks for when my coach would next come in. She would also make observations on how I would work within the office, and then all this would be uploaded onto my portfolio. And then to get to Endpoint assessment, I needed to be at 100% on all my assignments and tasks.
Okay, thank you very much. And during that period, again, What if you were finding something challenging? Say if you were at school, you might put your hand up or go and see a teacher, wouldn't you? What would you do on your apprenticeship if you were struggling and you needed that extra help?
So my line manager, me and my line manager would have regular one-to-ones, and if I was ever struggling, my line manager would look at the key areas where I am finding things challenging, and then hopefully work together to sort of then tell my careers coach, and then I could always phone up my careers coach and ask for more help, or email my careers coach. And like when she used to come in every month, she would ask, am I struggling on anything, or do I need any extra support or help? And that was always there. If I ever did need any support or help, that was always offered.
Excellent. So basically it sounds like it was a supportive environment from both the employer angle and the provider angle then.
Yeah, very.
Brilliant. Now, Lucy, I'm guessing because yours was a degree apprenticeship, the way it was delivered perhaps slightly different. I'm guessing there was a sort of a structure around term time at the university. So how was your 20% sort of calculated and done?
Yeah. So again, we also had 1 day a week. So I travelled to Manchester 1 day a week and attended the lectures and the lab sessions in uni. But the lecturers were always conscious that we were only there for 1 day per week. So the remote presence was always there, and we always were able to get in contact with who we needed virtually. So quite similar really. And work were always quite accommodating with any extra work that I needed to do. The way they kind of structured the degree was they gave us more practical work to do, and they kind of made it quite loose in terms of we could apply our day-to-day role to a lot of the assignments. So it kind of came hand in hand really. So there was always that accommodation there with my employer, with my line manager, that they would allow me to kind of complete tasks, uni tasks, side of desk during the week for the other 4 days as well. So it was all quite cumulative really, because it was the work that I was doing in uni did apply to my role as well. So it was quite good really.
I think that's a really crucial point. I'm sure it applies to yourself, Isabelle, as well, that what you're learning is on the apprenticeship and moving towards your endpoint assessment, which I'll come to shortly, is directly contributing to what you're doing in your job. And I think the benefit, you've clearly pointed out, the benefit of an apprenticeship, perhaps over full-time studies, you get to put that learning into practice immediately, rather than waiting to finish your current learning and then applying for a job and moving into that. So thank you very much for that. Just going to move on then. So in terms of moving you towards your endpoint assessment. So Isabelle, you've touched on that you had to get sort of 100% marks in all your assignments. What happened at the point before your endpoint assessment? And from what I know is that there's an agreement between the employer and the training provider as to when you're ready, because I think the training provider assesses you on your sort of knowledge, but the employer has a certain role to assess you on your ability to do the job, I suppose the bottom line is, isn't it?
Yes, so work have to make sure that you are ready to get put into endpoint assessment, and the training provider, they make sure that you're all up to speed with your learnings, your skills, your abilities, and making sure that you are ready. But with work, they have to make sure that you are 100% ready to go forward with this, because it's not a challenging time, but it is quite a big piece of work that you will be working on for. I worked on my endpoint assessment for 4 months, so I had to complete a project within work, which was around a business improvement. So I was working on a business improvement for about 4 months within work, and then once I had got my project complete and I felt like I was ready for endpoint assessment, work had to make sure that I was ready as well. But then we had to sign an agreement to make sure that we was ready to go in for the endpoint assessment, where I would have an examiner examine me on my projects. I had to make sure that within my project I could talk about it. I could make a presentation where I detailed everything about my project, the ins and outs of it, and then I also had an exam online. So this was a multiple choice exam, and within that we was asked many questions. I think it was out of 60, and you needed 30 marks and above to pass. So that was one out of the exams, 1 out of 2 of the exams for the endpoint assessment. So the second one was delivering a project presentation to an examiner that was external.
Okay, so that examiner, was that a face-to-face scenario? Was that done sort of over virtually?
Virtually, yeah, over Teams like this, yeah. So it was virtually.
And do you know what the examiner get to see any information about your project in advance, or were you there to present it to him as a first time he or she had viewed it?
Yeah, so it was the first time they had ever viewed it, and they have like a mark scheme that they go off, so to make sure that you are doing certain things within your project. Have you got team members involved? Have you worked on this all alone, or what are the challenges within your project? And especially during the global pandemic, I was completing my project working from home. So that was one of the challenges, but it was good for the examiners to see that you had these challenges and you still managed to get through your project.
Okay, really interesting. So how did the Apprentice Academy and your employer, presumably, how did they kind of prepare you for that actual process you were going to go through, that kind of professional discussion?
Yes, so I had a mock exam with the Apprentice Academy. So a lady would examine us as a mock, and I would deliver my project presentation to my training provider, and they would give me some top tips for when I'm ready for my endpoint assessment, and they'd let me know the key areas where I might need to improve, or the areas where I'm really strong. And then I also presented my project to my line manager, and she also gave me some top tips and skills and how to be good at communicating and how to make sure that you feel confident within your project and just things like that, really.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like then again similarities with school in terms of school prepare you with mock exams and practice papers and things like that before GCSEs and A levels. So again, it sounds like the training provider has supported you to achieve ultimately. Yeah,
definitely.
Now, Lucy, I think if I'm right again in this, I think yours was slightly different again in terms of the fact you had an endpoint assessment for your apprenticeship, but presumably you had something to achieve and pass to gain your degree as well.
Yeah, so they mixed it together. So the university designed the endpoint assessment around a standard format of a dissertation, typically completed by a full-time software engineering student. So this was called the Synoptic project in uni, and the main requirement was that I needed to create an application or a system that I'd coded myself. So the endpoint assessment was designed to allow me to showcase all the skills and knowledge that I'd learned over the 4 years whilst completing the course. So I knew I was well prepared. But yeah, it was I created a cross-platform mobile app for my endpoint assessment. So it was just like a dissertation. So the endpoint assessment actually was made up of the application itself, a project report, so the actual dissertation, the written report, which I think mine was about 23,000 words. And then I had to have a 30-minute presentation as well, and that was my supervisors in work came into uni, all of the subject matter experts in uni as well, and that was a 15-minute pitch and a live demo of the application, and also a technical discussion in Q&A. So all that happened. It was basically just like a dissertation, and then the endpoint assessor would then basically mark it against. So the Synoptic project was marked by my supervisor in uni, who's a subject matter expert for the topic that I picked. And then the endpoint assessor would review the project and the mark that was awarded, and then ascertain whether or not it was a qualification for the apprenticeship as well. So it was kind of all part and parcel, really.
Thank you there, and I think you've touched on something there about the robustness of that apprenticeship qualification. So not only has the subject matter expert at university marked you, but they've then been externally assessed on whether they've awarded you the right grade as well. So I think that that certainly gives confidence to employers that that people are who achieve their endpoint assessment. It's been a robust process, and they deserve to achieve that. So your app, was that something that was used in the workplace, or was it purely something that you built just for the actual the dissertation?
Yeah, so I built it purposefully for the dissertation, but it had to be something that was applied to my role as well. So it was something that my colleagues could use, but I had to use dummy data because obviously it's all sensitive data, so that was a bit annoying. So I had to create my own dummy data, but yeah, it had to apply to my job role basically. Yeah.
Excellent. I suppose a similar question to you, Isabelle. Did your sort of project improvement project that you put into place as part of your endpoint assessment, is that something that was kind of fully taken up by the business and is still running?
Yeah, so it was. So it was to do with my role and like a key area, which was a business improvement, which could help within my team. So mine was business office supplies. So we had to make sure that we was being like eco-friendly. So we was getting environmental products, making sure that we was only having 1 trip a week for the supplies, and making sure that so within my team they could use this process, which was making sure that we was doing lots of things like that, and within my team they do still use it now. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So again, it's continually it's a real work situation that you're being measured on and assessed against. Okay. So clearly now you've both achieved your endpoint assessment. So I mean, you've both progressed into full-time permanent employment beyond that. And when we know statistically from apprentices, we haven't got data for 19, 20 or 21 yet, so I suspect there may be a slight change in this data, but up until that point, statistically we knew that 75% of apprentices who complete their apprenticeship remain with the employer they've done their apprenticeship at the end. They move seamlessly into full-time permanent employment. A further 15% move into employment with another employer within 3 months of completing their apprenticeship. So we know that statistically we have a 90% progression rate from apprenticeships into full-time permanent employment, which is almost perfect. It's not far off perfect. Apprenticeships are proven to do what they're designed to do and act as that stepping stone launch pad into a career. So Isabelle, first of all, it may be too early, but what did you physically get after your apprenticeship finished? Things like, I mean, did you get a pay rise, for example? Did you get a bonus? Did you get a physical certificate you could lay your hands on? What did you get?
Well, so my contract, it's not just ended yet, it's nearly ended my apprenticeship. Well, I've completed my apprenticeship, but my contract is still on for the time being. I'm just waiting to get fully recruited to become employed. But I know that there's past apprentices at my work, and they have gone on to obviously gaining a real life role within work, and I know one of them has gone to do a higher apprenticeship. We've got degree apprenticeships within work now. So for me, I know if I'm to get employed, I would love to do a higher apprenticeship and develop more qualifications, because with my level 3 business administration apprenticeship, I've come out with two A levels, so it's equivalent to 2 A levels. So yeah, I would just love to develop more skills and qualities, because from this apprenticeship I feel like a new person. I've learned so many skills, I've met so many friends and within my company we have lots of long serviced people, so they've been working at my company for 30-40 years, and I feel like I've learned so much experience from them. And I'll just say, any advice to anyone that's wanting to do an apprenticeship, just make sure you're going into something you love and enjoy, and you'll come out with the qualification, and you'll also come out with a great experience which will stand you in good steps for the future.
Absolutely, fantastic, good point. Yeah, just out of interest, where would you, if you'd gone down the academic route and gone to college, at what point would you be at college right now?
So I would be I'd be leaving college this year. So I would think it's July time, or is it September time that I think you're in college for 2 years. So I would be leaving college this year. So, and I finished my apprenticeship last year, so it only took me 12 months. So the level 3 business administration apprenticeship takes between 15 to 18 months, and mine only took 12 months. So I've done 2 A levels. I've completed 2 A levels within a year.
Absolutely, yeah. So the speed of development and what can't be undervalued is the work experience that you've gained all the way through that. Which
is what a lot of providers and which is what a lot of businesses are looking for, the experience.
Absolutely. So Lucy, yeah, what happened at the end of your apprenticeship, both from a work perspective and a kind of, I suppose, a qualification perspective? Did you have a graduation ceremony like full-time university students go to?
Yeah, well, it was 2019, so before all of the coronavirus. So I had a full cap and gown job. It was great. It was really good, and I was part of the first intake of degree apprentices as well. So it was they made a big deal out of it because we were the first lot of graduates. So that was really nice. But yeah, the way, because it's such a large company, Barclays, they have your apprentices, and you do actually move up a grade each year of your apprenticeship. So you start as a level 1, and then in your second year of the apprenticeship you're a level 2, and then you come out as a level 3, and then you kind of you just full-time employment. Then you promote yourself as and when you go. Obviously the degree apprenticeship was longer, so it was 4 years, but I actually just sought a promotion myself, so I just got myself a new job whilst I was doing the degree. So I was actually promoted halfway through my degree as well. And then once I graduated, I just remained in my role. But I think I completed 2 different secondments whilst I was in work for my first year after I graduated. And I'm currently on another secondment now as well for a year, covering a maternity leave. So that's to help with my line management skills and experience. So hopefully that will stand me in a good stead to get further promoted again this year or next year. So yeah, it's a good progression, really good progression route.
Okay, so that's a very useful point as well, that your learning and development hasn't stopped when your apprenticeship stopped. It's continued within the business, and continue to invest. That's really good.
Yeah. And it's also worth noting that I wasn't tied as well. So whilst I was doing the apprenticeship, I was able to move around. So I got myself a new job into a role that I preferred to my original job. I didn't have to stay in my role whilst I completed my apprenticeship. And it's probably also worth noting as well that although they've invested all of this money in me, obviously they paid for my degree, I'm not actually tied to the company either. If I wanted to move to a different company now, I can do. I'm not tied to them in any way, and I could have done that straight from graduating as well. So it's a really good option.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I do get that question from a lot of young people and parents and teachers about being tied to a contract because that company's paid for your degree, and all the research that I've looked at says you can't actually be tied down to that type of contract, because the business is gaining value out of you while you're an employee and while they're invested in you. Yeah, so that's a very good point. Thanks, Lucy. Just at the end then, just about perhaps where to find apprenticeship vacancies and how to go about applying. So I've touched on what the actual recruitment process would look like, but in terms of actually finding those vacancies and before making that step into an application, there are a number of routes to go down. Firstly, you could be like Lucy and apply directly to the business. Absolutely fine. I'd heartily recommend that, especially if you know, like Lucy did, and you got the word that they're recruiting straight to their website. You could use Google and obviously find some of those businesses that are recruiting at the moment. You might do it differently. You might go down Isabelle's route, and you might have some work experience in year 10 and build relationships from that. In my experience, that's perhaps a little bit more rare. Another tactic is to contact the training providers who deliver the apprenticeships. They, of course, will work with multiple employers. They will often deliver different types of apprenticeships as well, and they can provide a supportive environment prior to applying. They can assess your ability at the point you've expressed that interest and confirm that you're able to progress to an apprenticeship or not. And then, assuming you are, they can point you towards certain employers that they think you would be the right match for, having worked with those employers over years. One kind of easy place to start with, I think, though, is the government's Find an Apprenticeship website, which hopefully someone can put into the chat function at the moment. And the Find an Apprenticeship website, it's a government website. It looks like the same place that you renew your passport or your driving license, but it is practical. It is a useful website, and it's a live apprenticeship vacancy website. So you can type in your home postcode, you can type in the job that you're looking for, you can determine how far you'd wish to travel, and it'll filter out all those options that fit into that search criteria. Now, because it's a live vacancy website, it will feature opportunities that could be starting this month or next month, but it'll also feature opportunities that will be live and available to start from August or September. As we move towards Easter, and probably between Easter and the May half term, more and more of the vacancies on the Find an Apprenticeship website will be targeting current year 11 and year 13 leavers to start in August, to start in September. So don't be disheartened if you're looking right now when all the vacancies that you're interested in are starting before you leave your current education establishment. They will start appearing soon. Other places to look are the GMAX website, the Greater Manchester Apprenticeship and Careers Service, will provide a huge amount of information about apprenticeships. And it will also features vacancies on there as well. You may also, as a young person in school at the moment, may also be using that website currently for some of the careers activities that they do in school. I would also recommend the Greater Manchester Apprenticeship Hub. If you want to hear from, you may want to hear from Lucy and Isabelle again, who have a video on there sharing their experiences, but also some of the other Greater Manchester Apprenticeship ambassadors who want to talk about their positive apprenticeship experience. So I would recommend that. And then finally, something that's been launched this week is Find a Training Provider tool for apprenticeships in Greater Manchester. So I've touched on the fact that some of the vacancies that you'll see are starting too soon, or you may not be able to find the vacancy you're looking for. Well, it might be that vacancy just isn't ready to be published yet, and that employer wants to wait another couple of months. And what Find a Training Provider does is it enables you to search for the type of apprenticeship you're looking for. You can search by the sector you're looking for, and it will tell you which training providers in Greater Manchester. Search results, you can follow a link straight to the training provider to enable you to contact them, and also there's a link to the Institute for Apprenticeships website that will actually tell you what you'll be doing on that apprenticeship and how you'll go about being assessed and measured. So that's just been launched this week as a way of finding some of the training providers across Greater Manchester all in one place. So that's pretty much from me. I can throw it back to Kevin at this point and see if there are any questions for Lucy, Isabelle or myself.
Thanks, Matt. Matt, just if you could clarify a couple of things, because I know Isabelle and Lucy have both said Isabelle's done a level 3, Lucy's done a level 6. Can you just let the audience know about what the different level of apprenticeships are? So, for example, the GCSE, the level 2 qualification, do apprenticeships start at that stage, and how far up do apprenticeships go?
Sorry about that, I just lost connection then, so I didn't catch the end of your question, but I think you're asking about the levels of apprenticeships and their comparisons with perhaps school and college qualifications.
Exactly, thanks, Matt.
So yes, apprenticeships go from level 2 to level 7. So a level 2 apprenticeship, in terms of the challenge and the knowledge and skills you'll have to demonstrate to achieve the Endpoint assessment and gain the qualification, that's equivalent to gaining 5 GCSEs at grade 4 and above. As Isabelle touched on, a level 3, what we call an advanced apprenticeship, that is equivalent to 2 A levels or a BTEC qualification that you can obtain at college. We also then have what we call higher apprenticeships that operate between levels 4 and 7. So level 4 is a higher national certificate, level 5 is a higher national diploma or foundation degree, level 6 is degree, and level 7 is masters. And then we also have degree apprenticeships, which is the route Lucy took, at level 6 degree and level 7 masters as well. The main differences between, let's say, a higher apprenticeship at level 6 and a degree apprenticeship at level 6 is that the degree apprenticeship, it's delivered by a university, the qualification achieved is a degree. On the higher apprenticeship, it's equivalent to a degree, just as highly valued by an employer, but it's not an actual degree. In terms of entry points, we tend to find that school leavers at the end of year 11 would move into either intermediate or advanced apprenticeships. Each employer has their own entry requirements. You can have the same apprenticeship with slightly different entry requirements. As a very general rule, intermediate apprenticeships, normally the employer is looking for grade 4 at GCSE, English and maths, to be able to apply for those. We do see variations either way. With the advanced apprenticeships, they're normally looking for that GCSE in English and maths plus 3 or 4 other GCSEs. Of course, certain apprenticeship subjects may require higher grades. So if you want to be an accountancy at level 3, you may need a grade 5 or 6 at maths, for example. The higher in degree apprenticeships are aimed at people with an existing level 3 qualification. So you heard from Lucy, has gone from an A level straight to a degree apprenticeship. The other opportunity is what Isabelle alluded as a potential for her, where you can move from an advanced apprenticeship because it's equivalent to A levels into a higher or degree apprenticeship. Then I have a colleague who completed an advanced apprenticeship in business administration, moved on to a level 5 a higher apprenticeship in leadership and management, and then has started last October a level 7 master's level degree apprenticeship in I can't remember the precise name, but a business master's degree apprenticeship. So she's progressed to that level 7 qualification without sort of needing A levels or anything in between.
Fantastic, thanks, Matt. My colleague Anna has been answering some questions on the chat throughout the session. I think because everyone has spoken so well and covered so much, that possibly everyone's questions may have been answered already. I don't see any new questions coming in. So we're just going to finish up the session and ask you to visit GMAC's events section to find out more about what's happening this week. Matt has given some websites that you can visit to find out more information. I think again my colleague Anna has posted those into the chat as well. To finish, I just want to say a massive thank you to Matt, Lucy and Isabelle. It's been tremendous. I've learned a lot myself. I'm sure our audience has. And again, just thanks very much for your time. Everyone else who's tuned in, thank you for coming along. Hopefully you have more knowledge now on apprenticeships. If there are any questions, do get in touch with us, maybe through GMAX, and we can answer those questions or queries that you may have. Hopefully we'll see you at more events during the week. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Monday and have a lovely week. Bye bye.